It's wonderful to have a chat to Jeff Brayley, social researcher at station sponsor McCrindle. They bring data to life, and you do that for leaders in business, in organisations, churches, community groups. Jeff, what is the data that leaders should be looking at as they look into the future?
Leaders should be using multifactorial data. It's all about variety and lots of different data sets. We want to help leaders become really powerful at impacting and shaping a positive future. And so futuristic thinking is what we want to encourage people towards. You also need to be thinking generationally, understanding how society is changing, and also be practical, not just theoretical. Leaders should have a vision for the future and a plan for today.
Now, generations are working side by side so much more. Do you have any data around that?
Absolutely. A whole report, and there's a great infographic on the generations at work right now. 4 generations in Australia, from Gen Zs aged 16 to 30, who are motivated and looking for accessible and approachable leadership, all the way up to baby boomers that are looking for proximity when looking for new work. They want something close to home. And so we've got a great infographic there available for leaders to engage and motivate their teams effectively.
Jeff, I've seen this treasure trove. It really is. You're giving full access for 7 days. So how can people actually get access to this?
You can get the 50 plus infographics, 40 plus reports, courses, all on mccrindle.com. Search McCrindle Plus and you'll find that 7-day free trial. And we hope it empowers a positive future for all of society.
Jeff, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Station sponsor McCrindle, and you can get all that at mccrindle.com. Welcome to the Towards Understanding podcast. It is great to have you with us. My name's Clayton Bjelland. What I love is bringing to you each and every week a phenomenal story that helps us step that bit closer towards understanding our life better, somebody else's life better, or maybe God's plan for our life better. Let's get stuck into another great story.
Towards Understanding with Clayton Bjelland.
Ever read a story and just not really thought about the bits between the lines? Oh yeah, maybe it's a novel and they're describing how everyone feels, but maybe you've read an autobiography or a non-fiction book about some sort of battle that occurred hundreds and hundreds of years ago. We never perhaps really think about what someone's emotions might be in that. You know, I think that at times we can do the same thing with reading the Bible. We hear these stories, or perhaps if we've read them a lot, we get used to those stories, and we don't really think about the humanity that meets with this divine nature. This is a part of the telling that Paul Syrstad has done, the creator, director, the writer of the Testament, a remarkable televisual telling of the book of Acts. We're going to get into this story with him, but before we do, would you rate, review, like, share, follow the program? Helps us get it out to more people. It's all free. We just love sharing these stories with as many as we can on the Towards Understanding podcast. All right, let's chat with Paul. Well, this is Towards Understanding. I'm Clayton Bjelland, and it is an absolute privilege to have a chat to the man behind this new TV series called Testament, which is really a very interesting retelling of the story of the book of Acts in the Bible. He's the creator, he's the director, he's the producer. I'm assuming he cuts the lunches up for all of the actors on the set as well. Paul Syrstad joins us. G'day, Paul.
G'day, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me, man.
Can I say, I have seen over the years, I've been doing this show for almost 2 decades now, and you get a lot of, have a preview of this, movie, have a preview of that movie. I can, hand on heart, say I don't think I've ever been more moved, touched, excited by what I saw when I saw those first 2 episodes of what you have created with Testament. There is so much depth in what this is. You must be super proud of what you've achieved.
Yeah, I think it's been quite a journey, and it's been really lovely because you spend so long with the project working on it in private, really, with your team, and then in the edit room, and it's a very your thing. So it's been wonderful, yeah. We released it on June 8th, the first episode, and it's been wonderful to see everyone's reactions and see people connect to this biblical story, this ancient story, reimagined in this alternate modern day. Yeah, it's been quite a mad ride, to be honest. It's been great.
How do you describe it? Because I was trying to describe it to somebody. I'm like, it's sort of like in the future, but in the past at the same time. And it's not quite dystopian, but it has a feel of that, but it's not what it is. And like, how do you actually describe the sort of the setting of what you were trying to do?
Yeah, I guess the best way is, I call it just an alternate modern day. And why it's that alternate is because it's today, but without the digital revolution. I don't think you can tell the same story with the same kind of dangers and threat levels with a digital revolution. It's if a crowd is amassing a following, that usually means online, and that's not quite what this story is about. So yeah, it's this world without a digital revolution. And there's still like a few big organizations still going on, like the Roman Empire are still in power. You've got the temple who are still ruling the religious order in the same way. So yeah, an alternate modern day is how I describe it.
So for those who perhaps are listening and you're thinking, okay, so put me sort of where this space is. So there's a book in the Bible called Acts. This is very traditionally following on as a rule from a reading of the Gospels. In fact, it's written by one of those who wrote the Gospels, a guy by the name of Luke. And he goes on to tell the story after Jesus ascends into heaven, and then his followers and all of what they are doing and how they are now living out the calling that Jesus has given them. And so I think, Paul, the thing I'm fascinated by as well as you did that is this sort of ability as you sort of watch this to go, oh yeah, we're back in the past and we're in the current. And as we did this, it's a real skill to do that. When you first came up with the idea, and I'm assuming, there's others that helped you with that as well, I think there would be a real ease to be able to fall into one or the other, to just fall right into the modern perspective of it. But there is this truth about the past that is still being told, sort of true to the book of Acts. You can constantly trace it to where it is. Was there a challenge to be able to constantly balance those two aspects, or did it just naturally fall through as you sort of wrote and produced it?
Well, there was when we were writing, so I had the privilege of writing with Faith and Kenneth. Faith is my wife, Kenneth is my brother-in-law. So it was a bit of a family unit writing this show, which was great. And yeah, so when I started, I wrote episode 1 kind of in isolation just to start us off, and then we came together. But there was this line in episode 1 that I think summed up everything. It's something old, yet something new. And that became the motto for how we wrote and how the season. So that the idea was you should be able to read these scripts and not really know what time period it's in, apart from when, it mentions a car, or when it mentions some like weird Z blade, which is our kind of sword staffs that the Romans have. There are little clues, but otherwise, apart from colloquializing language, it should be, something old, but something new. But, we're very much guided by, I think, when you're telling any famous story, whether it is Sherlock Holmes or whether it is Romeo and Juliet, these are stories that are respected by a lot of people and loved by many people. And I think when it comes to the Bible, you've got a whole nother level of, people are devoted to this, and as am I. So there's a complete respect when approaching this text and wanting to get it right, stay true to what we call the spirit of the text, in terms of, if it's trying to do something, don't try and pull it in a different direction. So keeping true to that, whilst being able to imagine, the bits in between the sentences. The thing is about like the book of Acts, it's a fairly short book in terms of novels. It's not a novel, it's a historical writing. But, this piece of text spans over maybe 20, 30 years. So there's a lot that happens in between sentences. So we got to kind of imagine how things might happen as well to have a proper emotional impact, because, otherwise a bad guy just might appear at the end of something and you go, yeah, but what was his story beforehand? We don't really know. But yeah, you're right. It's balancing of two different worlds, which was throughout. We got into a rhythm though. It became quite a lot of the time. It was trying to bring us into more modern. I think Kenneth with the Apostles was very good at going, we need their language to be more colloquial, more just everyday, like you and I, so we can see ourselves in them.
I want to come back and then talk a bit more about how you created it and produced that, and then also some of the reactions you've had. So we are going to come back and do a bit of that. Can we zone in on you a little bit first, Paul? I want to hear a bit of your story. Let's start maybe around that faith aspect that you alluded to just then as well. For you, a relationship with Jesus, a connection to a Christian faith, was that something that's always been a part of your world? Is that something that happened a bit later on in your life?
Bit of both, really. It's one of those weird things of, so my parents became Christians just before they had me, actually. And so I was raised in a Christian household. But I think as the years went on, especially when I entered my teenage years, it became more of an intellectual exercise. So I enjoyed debating about the existence of God. but that's where it ended. I liked calling myself a Christian, but it was when I went to drama school. So I trained first as an actor, and that's where I met my wife, Faith. And she was there and in my class, and she heard that I was a quote unquote Christian. And she was like, "Why are you swearing so much?" I was like, "Because I want to." And then she's like, "Why, what are you reading in your Bible?" I was like, "Who reads their Bible? Don't be ridiculous." She just kept on challenging me, and she invited me to church. I actually went when she wasn't there. I responded to the message. I just put my hands up, like, if you felt anything. I was like, yeah, this is cool. And they put in my hands, a version of the New Testament, which was, and this sounds odd for anyone who's a Christian, this will sound really weird, but it was in a magazine format, and it was reordered. So it started with the book of Romans, and usually that book is quite a bit later into the New Testament. And yeah, it might seem odd, but for me, as someone who hadn't really interacted with the Bible, reading Romans genuinely exploded my mind. I suddenly understood what grace meant. I suddenly understood what the story of Jesus was all about and why. And it really turned my life upside down. I started having a relationship with the God who I claim to follow. And yeah, it changed everything. And then so as I was a believer, a follower, I was also acting. But then there came one point in my life where I think at least I, as a creative, as an actor, I would often say when I reach a certain level of success as an actor, I would use that platform of success to be able to point people to Jesus, to glorify God. It's a very Christian thing to say. There was a point in my life where I felt God impress something on my heart, and it was an answer back to that. And it was just, that's all well and good, but what are you going to do for me right now? And that question changed the course of my artistic life. I thought I would do the more Clint Eastwood style of, trajectory of career. Act first, be a cowboy, direct later. But that wasn't the case. It took me a few years. I thought I'd be a youth pastor. I thought I would go to Bible school. I'm very grateful I didn't become a youth pastor. Love those guys. I don't have the patience. Only the patience for film sets.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I started making short films that reimagined parables. And that's when this whole thing started. It was just following what I felt was a real impression that God was pushing back on me to my desire. And I was like, let me just be a chiropractor and click that into place. Like, oh, great. Thank you.
And, you have told these parables in, longer form and shorter forms and things like that as well in what you did. And I suppose both them and also Testament is really, parables by their nature are stories that are trying to tell some greater purpose, and you're trying to do that in what you're doing. Is there a reason that you feel like you're perhaps drawn to these, at least at the moment, and these sorts of stories?
Yeah, I mean, I said I didn't. Thank goodness I'm not a youth pastor. It's because I did serve at the youth team for quite a while, and I do remember working with one kid in particular, and we were talking about the Good Samaritan, which is like a really famous parable in the Bible. If you haven't read it, check it out. It's quite short, but it's fun. And I remember talking to this guy, and I said, "What do you think the purpose of this story is?" And he went, "Oh, that Samaritans are always good." And like, of course you'd think that. If you don't have any historical knowledge or cultural knowledge, or about the first century Israel at that time and Samaria, of course that's what you come away with. And I was like, and if you're not going to do like some big, but at your age and at your level of understanding, just being a new Christian, yeah, of course, why would you? So it was a real call to try and pull out timeless truths out of parables and present them in a way that people would understand at least a core of the message. They're so multi-layered and multifaceted. There's no way we could do that with one short film, but to bring out a timeless truth. So when someone watches it, they go, "Oh, I've never thought of it like that," or "Oh, I've never kind of received that idea that this is actually a racial, cultural story, The Good Samaritan. It's about crossing that boundary." There's multi-layers, of course, but that's certainly one of them. And so, yeah, I get a privilege to preach now and again as well in my church. And so it's the heart of the communicator in me wanting to pull people into the stories and see themselves in it and get them engaging with the story, with the characters, with the feeling. Even during our show, we had a theological advisor And he was quite blown away because all the actors would come up to him. So I'm going a little off tangent, but I think it'll tie in. And he said, "You know what? I've been a pastor for X many years, and people always go, 'What does this bit mean? What does that mean? What does this? How does this fit in?' It's like never have I had people come up and go, 'How did he feel?' And it's a question that I think us as humans want to resonate with, but sometimes when we go a bit to, Bible study or religion, we forget the humans behind these stories. And so, yeah, part of my aim here is to pull out the humanity and for us to connect to the great picture that is drawn out in the Bible.
And I think that's back to what you talked about at the start, right? What's the bits between the lines? That's where you can actually start telling some of those stories. And I think you're so right that, I've been reading the Bible for years, and it can be so easy to read it as almost like a textbook, right? That like it's devoid of emotion, it's devoid of humanity. This is a story, and I'm supposed to take a learning from it, rather than actually understand it. Well, people who went through this, and that the relevance for me is that I'm going through stuff, and how is God going to interact with me? I think that's wonderful in that regard.
Like we often read things in hindsight. So we read with the end in mind. And that's a wonderful way to read things. But in fact, the way people experience things is not that. It's you don't know what the next verse is. And that uncertainty, it throws up wonderful things for a writer, for actors. We tackled the story of Ananias and Sapphira, which is one of the hardest stories in the New Testament, I think. And we really got to explore what might this have done to Peter? That to happen in front of him. Like, I don't know, if it was me, I would have been wrecked by it. Try and stay as faithful as possible, but my goodness, it would hurt.
Just for those who maybe don't know, just quickly, you want to summarize that story? Because I think it's an absolutely incredible moment. I've often thought about that story for the guys who had to go and take the bodies away and then suddenly come back and do the same thing again. Like, what were they going through?
Yeah, it's the story as the church is starting to grow. So this is like really fairly soon after the ascension, and there's this couple who basically lie. They say they've sold a property and they're giving everything that they made to the movement, and it's just revealed that they are lying, and they're given a chance to tell the truth and they don't. And when they lie again, they drop down to the floor dead, and they have to be buried. And I think I've seen this story done quite a few different ways. And it's often with this kind of power and pride on Peter's side, because Peter's the one that they're talking to. And I'm like, no, I can't see it that way. If we're meant to love each other, then every fiber of my being is willing these people to tell the truth. Like, please, goodness me, just tell the truth. You know what you're doing, and they don't. Of course, that's our interpretation of it, but that's us as actors and writers asking the human and the humanity behind what we're given in black and white.
Paul, many I'm sure have commented about the fact that, Chosen has been running now for the last few seasons. It's telling sort of the story of the Gospels. It's telling it in very much sort of the traditional style in terms of the same time age gap. There is I suppose a similarity in the sense that this is a series that you're trying to tell a book in that regards. Was there any leaning on that sort of concept, or was this something that actually was coming about independently of The Chosen? How has that worked for you?
Sure, yeah. Well, we started the thing that kicked it all off in terms of those parable short films that we talked about earlier. We did a series of 5, and that we were doing before we knew about The Chosen. So we'd already started doing this, but being a filmmaker in the faith-based space, well, that's a hard sentence to say 3 times fast. It was, I've got my ear to the ground in terms of not necessarily shows, of course that, but more of how they're being distributed. It might be the same in Australia, but I'm based in the UK, and what I found a lot of is faith-based stuff that's made in the US. A lot of the time is geo-blocked. So it's actually not available to watch. And I remember as a young guy, I wanted to watch these. I mean, how about let's not call them the shining example of Christian films. Let's call them the typical example of Christian films. Right. I wanted to watch them in the UK, and I couldn't. They were geo-blocked to the States, and I was like, "Oh, this is a bit ridiculous." And so when The Chosen started being released and being available, I was like, "Who's behind this?" In terms of the distribution. And it was a fairly new company called Angel Studios. who were the people who, they don't anymore, but they first distributed The Chosen. And they got it kickstarted in getting it global and all over the world. And that's what got me fascinated. So these short films, I'd started tying together into a feature film, which is a really odd movie. It's called The Parables Retold. It's a strange film. It's an anthology that you follow a main character, but you also have 5 short films in it. It's weird, but it resonated with people, and that's nice. And if it didn't resonate with you, hey, I understand. It's a weird film. That movie, it came to a point in the UK where it was like, okay, we need to look for distribution. And I remembered Angel Studios. So I submitted it to them. They took it on. I mean, there's a bits of stories in between that, but that's a bit boring. When we were sat down with Angel with this film, they were like, we kind of got talking about potentially doing a series. And I think Angel's whole idea at that point was to do more series. I think now they've pivoted a little bit to more feature films because of The Chosen. And for us, it was like, yeah, I mean, we'd absolutely love to. We'd even, whilst making the film, we thought, oh, wouldn't it be cool to tell a Book of Acts series? But, you know, we made the film for about $50,000, which I know sounds a lot to many people, but in terms of filmmaking, it is usually like a couple of people's lunch orders. So we just don't know how to raise that kind of money. And Angel went, well, we'll help you there. We'll help you with crowdfunding. We'll help you get set up. We'll introduce you to investors, because they don't fund their own shows. At least not then, they didn't. They made the thinking of it possible, of going, we could do a series. So we did a few crowdfunds, and that by investment crowdfunds over in the States. And that got us enough to get kickstarted into some development. We wrote the scripts, we got all of that. And then slowly, before you know it, we're making a TV show. And it really is, I marvel a little bit at, you know, following what I felt when God was like, you know, what are you going to do for me now? This was the plan, you know, when I kind of answered. I just didn't think it would be this fast. I'm 33 years old, and it's a little bit odd to be doing it this quickly. Hey, here we are.
Right. Well, and it as I was mentioned at the start, if you just tune in, like I was so moved by this, and you know, the producer of our show who works with us is the same, and both of us sort of immediately said, after, you know, at that point, we're just in the first couple of episodes, and we're like, we're just reading the Book of Acts differently now. When we read, there's just something different about it. There's a remarkable sense of presence in what this is as well. Can we talk a little bit about already, I suppose, the impact? And I suppose before I even ask you about some of the stories of what people have shared with you of the impact, your desire as you go into it, you know, obviously you're a filmmaker, you're going, well, I want to create something that's excellent. I want to create something that's a phenomenal piece of work. But presumably you also had an audience member in mind of what they would actually take out of that. What was that aim for you as somebody watched it that you were hoping that they would walk away with?
Yeah, great question. To be fair, what's funny is that the first thing you say in terms of want it to be excellent is, I think, something that oftentimes maybe not thought about enough when it comes to faith-based media. You know, we talk about The Chosen so much, and a few other shows now that have raised their heads, is because they've actually put that very close to the top. They've gone, we need to make something that is of quality, and it is good, and it is entertaining on its own level, whether you know the story, whether you don't, whether you believe the story, whether you don't, regardless. To create something entertaining and fun to watch on screen is a big one. And then, yeah, there's 2 audiences in mind for me. I always think that, you know, when it comes to Christian media, there's stuff that's either from the church or for the church. And oftentimes we get a lot of stuff for the church. And I think I see Testament as from. For people who are believers, we're telling the story in a different setting to kind of, exactly as you said, you're reading it differently now. It's to challenge you. It's to go, you know, I said I get the privilege to preach a lot of the times, and I remember one sermon I did. I told the story of Abednego, Meshach, and Shadrach. And if anyone's familiar with that Bible story, I said those 3 names in a different order. And so anyone who's familiar with that story, just so you know, if you don't know, they stopped their car and they went, "What? What is he talking about?" And my whole church, even when I said it, they leant forward, eyes widened. They're going, "What is he saying?" I just changed the order of 3 names. But when we're so used to hearing stories in the same way, we disengage, we disconnect, because we go, "Oh, I know this one." But I had them in the palm of my hand, because I was like, now I can talk to you about this story that you think you know. And maybe you do, and that's okay. But I'm asking for a re-engagement, and whether you kind of come away going, "Oh, I wouldn't have done it like that," or "I thought you would have been like this," or "Actually, I think that was spot on. That really spoke to me." I actually don't mind, and it's not my kind of problem there. My job is to make you re-engage and to actually go, "Oh, I've gone back to the Bible and read it again and gone, oh yeah," or "Oh no." I don't mind. So that's kind of my for believing audiences, and to ask them, we always talk about the early church, which this story is, and we say these are the heroes of the faith back in the day. But you and I, right now, we are Acts chapter 29. Acts only has 28 chapters, so we're the unfinished chapter. We are continuing this story, and how are we meant to be doing that if that the same call is on us as it was back then? So it's meant to be a challenge. And for people who don't know the story, some people love tunics and sandals. I do. Like, my goodness, it's give me that world any day. But for some people, it is a bit of a switch off. And so we're kind of presenting this world that is pre-built. It's already there, and you're entering a world that you learn as you go. And it's exciting. It's dangerous. It's a little bit unnerving. So it's to introduce people who don't know the story to the story in a complete fresh way, new way. And hopefully, yeah, maybe you check out some spoilers, because, I always say spoilers can be found in the book of Acts. I'm not going to give you any.
Let's pivot to, I suppose, some of the stories that you've heard. I'm assuming people have contacted you or let your team know about, hey, look, this was the impact that I had. This is what this has given me. Do you have a favorite story or two to share?
Do you know what? We've been flurried so much. I haven't stopped that much, but it's more when we're on the live streams and looking at the live ones. There's just quite a lot of people talking about how much they are reading the original story and realizing how much is actually in there. They've kind of gone, "Oh, I didn't realize that whole section is in the Bible." I'm like, "Yeah, we didn't make it up. It's there." But people have been coming away going, "This has challenged me to be bold in my faith. This has challenged what I believe. This has challenged." Our main character in this series, our avatar, who we experience the story through, is Stephen. And his whole thing is believing without seeing. And that's the story of us today. And people have been messaging going, "Yeah, I've never quite considered that it must have been like that for people early on, just like us." And then from a television perspective, they get to episode 7, and I've had this message quite a few times. And this is lovely. I mean, I will say it proudly, because love, great. Maybe they haven't watched that much, but they say episode 7 is one of the greatest hours of TV they've ever watched. Oh, well, that's very nice. Maybe not. We'll see. Who knows? But we're very proud of episode 7 for sure. It's a special one for us. But yeah, it's been quite beautiful seeing people's reactions and just seeing how people have connected with stories, people being able to see themselves. We've got a really multicultural casting as well, so people are just seeing themselves in different roles and going, I never thought of that. Yeah, it's great.
And there is this program goes through Australia and New Zealand, and there is definitely an Australian New Zealand influence in the making of this as well. Do you want to share a bit about that?
Yeah, VFX Magic is our VFX team, and they reached out to us. Andrew Clark, who's the head of that company, he reached out to us on LinkedIn. Funny, because I think neither me or Jackie, the producer, really go on LinkedIn, but we opened that message, and he kind of shared that he'd love to do this. We were chatting with other houses, but he had a heart for it, and his team is in Australia and in New Zealand. So it was quite fun. I've got my marketing, side in America with Angel. So I would film in the morning. Then by the end of my filming day, I'd be able to meet with them about the marketing, and then they would go to bed. And Australia would be waking up at that time. So I'd got to, I didn't get much sleep during this time, but it was great because it means I got to have all my meetings and everything I needed to do. But yeah, they were absolutely fantastic. I think what they've done on the budget that we gave them, which is laughable, was absolutely incredible. They really poured time, heart. There's a fire sequence on one of the episodes, and really, if it wasn't for them, it would be terrible, because they even built out the set again and they did real fire. They were like, this isn't quite working, and they just reshot stuff and were like, this is amazing. So they really saved one part of the show, which was fantastic. But yeah, VFX Magic have been absolutely incredible for this show.
Next steps for you, what, people are going to, we're hoping, I'm sure, from your perspective, as many people as possible watch this series one of what it is. What's the next stages, and what are you currently working on and focusing on?
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, this series is planned to be a multi-season series. The Book of Acts, as I said, it spans over such a long time that we want to take our time with it. We want to do it well. We want to get all to the nooks and crannies of everything. So yeah, we're looking at the minute 6 seasons, maybe. That obviously will change. We don't want to draw anything out more than it needs to be, but that's the plan. So we're looking at investors and fundraising for season 2, because we're an independent show. And actually, this is something I probably should have said about Angel. Angel doesn't hold any creative sway or creative say over the shows. So we have complete independence. The good thing about it is it means that, there's no theological sway, there's no creative say, there's no, we get to make what we want to make. The negative about that is we're in charge of raising our own money, and that's a little harder. But that's what we're trying to do. So hopefully that comes quickly, so we can start making season 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. And then I'm due to direct a movie about C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, about their faith, their friendship, and their fantasy. So that's in another draft of the scripting phase. So it's still in development. But yeah, we'll see what aligns in terms of schedules, because I want to do it all, Clayton. But just God willing, I can. That would be great.
Well, this is obviously why you're supposed to start earlier on in life rather than wait till a bit later to be the director and the creator and the producer, because you've got to get all this in. Paul, it's just been wonderful having a chat to you. Thank you for what you've made with this. Thank you for your time to join us on Towards Understanding. The whole aim of our program, that's why we called it that, is that we hope that as somebody listens, they head towards some better understanding in their world. Maybe it's a part of the Bible or something of God, or maybe it's just a different culture that they've understood. They might even disagree with what it is, but they head towards understanding. Thank you for being a huge part of that and joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been great. And yeah, if you, again, head over to Angel to watch the show, testamentseries.tv to find out more about the show. And yeah, we are so in your camp of getting people towards understanding of all of that. Isn't that great that we can do this all over the world? Amazing. Love it. Thank you.
Pleasure. Paul Syrstad, the creator, the director, the writer, producer of Testament, here on Towards Understanding.
Towards Understanding with Clayton Bielen. Only one sponsorship reaches 90 Christian radio stations and major cities across Australia and New Zealand. Towards Understanding, hosted by Clayton Bielen. Find this exciting opportunity on the sponsorship page at positivemedia.com.au.
It's wonderful to have a chat to Jeff Brayley, social researcher at station sponsor McCrindle. They bring data to life, and you do that for leaders in business, in organisations, churches, community groups. Jeff, what is the data that leaders should be looking at as they look into the future?
Leaders should be using multifactorial data. It's all about variety and lots of different data sets. We want to help leaders become really powerful at impacting and shaping a positive future. And so futuristic thinking is what we want to encourage people towards. You also need to be thinking generationally, understanding how society is changing, and also be practical, not just theoretical. Leaders should have a vision for the future and a plan for today.
Now, generations are working side by side so much more. Do you have any data around that?
Absolutely. A whole report, and there's a great infographic on the generations at work right now. 4 generations in Australia, from Gen Zs aged 16 to 30, who are motivated and looking for accessible and approachable leadership, all the way up to baby boomers that are looking for proximity when looking for new work. They want something close to home. And so we've got a great infographic there available for leaders to engage and motivate their teams effectively.
Jeff, I've seen this treasure trove. It really is. You're giving full access for 7 days. So how can people actually get access to this?
You can get the 50 plus infographics, 40 plus reports, courses, all on McCrindle.com. Search McCrindle Plus and you'll find that 7-day free trial. And we hope it empowers a positive future for all of society.
Jeff, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you.
Station sponsor McCrindle, and you can get all that at McCrindle.com.